Welcome to another video from Dr. Lock. Okay, about 6 months ago, I started a project of building some shelves, and this is what it looked like. So I superimposed the shelving over the top to get a rough idea of what I'm actually going for, and that's what this looked like. And as you can see from there, a lot of framing, a lot of wood, and things like that. So after about 6 months, which is longer than expected, I finally finished the shelving, and now this is what it looks like. So as you can see, shelving from left to right. I'll give you some dimensions on this, and then I'll go through a few things to share that, a few things I learned as well, and tell you some of the little tricks and things that I did that I found pretty good that other people might be interested in when building their sheds or building storage and things. So to start off with, I wanted it to be freestanding because this structure is blueprinted and they put it through a computer to say how much wind, how much load, things like that. I didn't want to affect on the strength of the overall shed. So freestanding was a better option rather than having to bolt onto the rafters or bolt onto the columns. So the columns basically hold everything up. So by putting extra holes into it and then putting weight hanging off it was undesirable. So I decided not to do that. So we went for freestanding. And all in all, it looks pretty good. It took a long time to get it to this stage, and each and every part of it just took a lot more time than expected. So each part, like you could say a door, so to speak, would take me about a week because I'd be doing maybe an hour a day. Every now and again I might get a couple of hours, and you've actually got to fabricate the frame, cut it, 45-degree angles, weld it, grind your welds down, make sure it, pre-fit it, make sure it's going to fit, and then bring it back down again. So all that takes time. And then after that, what took a lot more time than I expected was the painting. So 2 coats of black, and when it came to the wood, there's 3 coats of varnish on it. So 3 coats of varnish means 1 coat per day, wait 3 days, and you've also waited another 2 days for the frame. So 1 day to build the frame, next day to check it, weld all the accessories onto it, the hinges and the locks, or the locking plates, and then 2 days to paint it, 3 days to then you make up the timber another day, and then after that sand it all back, punch it back, punch all the nails in, and then varnish it 3 times, then put it all together, screw it all together, and then lift it up. Each door weighs about 25 kilos, I'd say. The width on it is 1.5, and they're about 1100 high. So all in all, it wasn't the easiest to put together. It wasn't like a DIY kit for any means, but in the end it did look, well, I'm happy with the look. There's a few things I've got to touch up, put some caps on and just finish up a few edges, but all in all, it's done. To get at this level, we're about 6 months in. So I'll tell you how much it cost me in the end. As far as time-wise, well, we're talking about 6 months, about an hour a day, every second day. Some days, on a weekend, I might get 4 or 5 hours on it. So eventually, it is done. And what's frightening about it, if that took 6 months, the next one over here is going to be another 6 months, and then this is probably going to be a year to do this. So at the moment I've got a bit of lights on just so I can show the reflection on the actual wood. That's 3 coats of polyurethane varnish, and even that stuff's not cheap. I went through about 8 litres just doing from there over to there, but on saying that, it seals up the wood and it does look quite presentable, gives a nice warm homely feeling with the wood, so that's a lot better than the galvanized and silver type look that the rest of the shed kind of has. So anyway, it's in. I've even got some downlights below there as well. They'll light up each sort of pod, so that's good. And I'll show you, so it's actually 9 bolt to the ground, but I'll show you one of the things we did do. So this column here, this C-section, we painted that, and that's got the 240 volt running up there, all in conduit and everything. But I put this aluminium composite panel in front. Now it's not super strong, it's just decorative, but it does look a lot nicer. So if you've got C-section that looks like this, see this big metal section here, that's what they call C-section, and it can be quite ugly. And of course on a shed build like this, you're going to end up with these columns. So what I did is I put these in front, and now it's kind of minimized the footprint of that. Eventually I'll put a piece of glass in here, and I'll put another piece of glass in here. I'm going to be using pool glass feet, which you can probably see one straight through there, and then I'll put a bit of right angle, maybe even tinted as well. That way it reflects a bit of sound when you're on the phone, and also makes it feel a bit more like a pod the lighting as well will also make it feel like a little bit of a pod. So originally I was going to sand this paint down, paint it twice, sand it with wet and dry and get it down to a smooth finish like you would an automobile, but I decided not to because the likelihood of getting a nick or a scratch would be quite likely, and the likelihood to need to repair it or modify it or change it is quite likely. So it just became not viable really to take it to that level. And the finish that I ended up with is kind of a little bit hammer toned, a little bit powder coating, like you got reflection, you got gloss, and that's kind of good enough for what I wanted to. So some of the big problems I had with this is the frames were not a problem. Getting them in, getting them squares was not a problem. Some of the big problems were the doors, getting them in, getting them gapped, and getting them opening properly. That was quite a nightmare, and having a reasonable type gap and having it straight. So I was going for straight on the glass where the glass is, bring it up, and I did achieve that there, and here as well. On this one here, you'll see one door slightly bigger because of where the glass is, and same on that side there. Originally I was going to go for hydraulic struts, which would have made the doors open up quite nicely, but after I did the first door, I found that the hydraulic struts needed a more stronger structure as far as the doors. The doors are wood paneling, and then they've got plywood behind it, so 12mm paneling, all tongue and groove type, and then nailed and attached to the plywood behind it, and then cut down, so kind of bonding them together to make a solid 24mm board, you could say, and then that's put into a 25mm right angle frame, so, and then attached to the frame. So that, generally speaking, it's good for a door, but it's not a solid type mass of a door. So when you've got a particular point pulling on it, it just kind of pulls the finish apart. So I decided not to go with hydraulic struts and just go with a more simpler option. And the simpler option was just to go with some webbing. Just some webbing, so you can open it all the way, like so. And when you're up on the scissor lift or man lift, you can actually just grab it from this point here. So it allows you to be in the middle and control the doors, as where the hydraulic struts wouldn't have done that. So having that strap there means that you've got reach of here and here, and you can pull the doors back in. So to open the doors, if I was to access something, I'd simply walk up to it and just pop the doors open like so, and then bring the lift up here, and I'll demonstrate the lift in a minute. When you reverse it up, you pretty much can access all of it. When you use the lift, it allows you to go up there, grab a box, put it on top of the lift, and then bring it down. So it's a lot safer than climbing a ladder and trying to balance a 20 kilo box on the front of the ladder. All right, so ideally I was going for 6 cubic meters. I probably ended up with a little bit less than that. Another one of the challenges I had was I was using, I think 2.5 or 3mm 50 by 50 right angle, which is this stuff here. And what I found out is that although it's steel and all the rest, there was still some bowing happening depending on the amount of weight. So that was a big problem. So I've had to actually reinforce the second level and use some threaded rod to bring it up to the right level. So if the middle shelf sags, it's not really an issue, but if the bottom shelf sags, it looks completely rubbish and terrible. So I've had to use some stronger steel on the second shelf above to bring it up, and I'll show you that. So to do that, there's only basically 2 bolts that are coming through, here and here, and same there. So 2 little mushrooms, you can't even notice what's going on inside there. And for all rights, it's going to do exactly what I need it to do. So it's going to be storage. I was going to go for a header above the top, but I think it's kind of unnecessary. It's a lot more work and unnecessary. I think they look tidy enough as it is. Leave it in the comments what you think. Also, all of this is freestanding. I did put a safety chain around just the post, so just in case we have a catastrophic failure, it is tied in with a chain on this column and this column, just in case that one of the heavy equipments or something knocks it, and we don't want it coming down because it's actually reasonably heavy. Each door being 25 kilos, you can start that up, plus the steel, it really does add up. As far as cost-wise, this whole build set me back. I did my calculations. I'll just go back to the thing. What was it? About $3,200. $3,200, 6 months of my time, and that was raw materials. A lot of that was well, I'll run through on what it was. All right, here we go. All right, so we've got the steel coming in at $1,600, a couple of journeys to the steel shops. Then we have paint coming in at about $450, which includes the varnish as well, and paint brushes. Another thing is with the paint brushes, because it was oil-based, every time you paint, you actually, like, it was too hard to clean out the brushes and keep them good. Sometimes I can get away with putting it in the fridge and wrapping it up and keeping it for a few hours, but generally speaking, it was a disposable brush and a disposable paint tray each time, and each part needed 2 coats, and I was kind of making one part at a time. So I went through a lot of paint brushes and paint trays, but that's okay. Bolts are about $200. The lock hardware was about $100. That includes these handles, as you can see here. So they're just enough for me to touch and to reach. I was going to go for a nice big one, which black one, which had rope on it and like have it in the middle, but that would mean that I'd actually have to bring something to access it by height. If I want to do it now and I just want to see what's inside, I can just reach up and just go like that and I can see. So by having all the containers labelled inside allows me to see what's there without needing a ladder of any description. That one I put a big magnet on. So if I look up there, I can start to see what's there. The next thing is to keep the doors closed. I used magnets. Magnets on a right angle on the inside. That works quite well, so the wind won't blow it open, and there's no real issues there. As far as locks, being a locksmith, yeah, I did want to do something a bit more fancy. I did want to do like a key combination or a keypad or keyless entry and all that sort of stuff. But then I realized with the slight movement of putting different weights and things, you will get a little bit of movement in it, even though it's all completely bolted together using stainless M10 bolts, or sorry, M12. It's keyless would have been just an ongoing problem. So I've gone for 2 right angle brackets, Lockwood ones, which are about $16, and just welding them on. And I'm actually going to pair that up with just some padlocks, some nice brass padlocks, which will, make that look nice. It's not high security because you can kind of climb over. It's really just to lock it up, to say, look, it's locked up. It doesn't have to be high security. Nothing really of that much value is going up here. It's more of just storage, storing machines that I'd use every 6 months or once a year. All right, so we're getting sidetracked here. Locking hardware, $100. Wood. So if you can imagine, this is 10 meters long. How much in wood do you think I've spent? And I think I've underquoted here, but I put down about $500, and I think that's probably about 3/4 of it, because you've also got to remember the wood in each level as well. They're about $60 a piece, so you got 120, 120, 120. So yeah, I think I did underestimate that one there. You probably even double it. So I'd be probably saying wood, probably about $1,300, which is quite a lot of money. The lights, $200. I already had the electrician put in the power points for them inside the cupboards so that they can be operated independently on a switch, and that's all was already in there. So the lights are cheap fittings. Another thing I learned about these lights is that I bought some standard bulbs for these. These are GU10 bulbs, and I bought the lowest wattage ones I could, and I found out the light fittings were heating up quite significantly. And what I found is that halogen light bulbs, although the wattage and all, they produce a whopping amount of heat. And for this type of light fitting, in the smallest of print, it says do not exceed, a certain amount of wattage. And I was getting the smallest ones I could anyway. Cut a long story short, if you've got these type of downlights, the best type of bulbs to go for, LED bulbs. So I bought a 20 pack of these and then found out that they actually hang outside and you can't put the bezel on. Then I bought some other little tiny smaller ones and they seem to work quite well. Only problem is I bought the wrong colour. So there's another problem. I have to buy another 20. So there's been a few trial things there. But all in all, I think it ended up quite well. Let me just demonstrate or show you a bit more of the inside. Alright, so get on my scissor lift, turn it on. Actually, I'm going to open up these cupboards first. I haven't put the straps, and I've still got to paint the inside of the cabinets. As you can see, that one there doesn't have the strap on it yet, but that's not a big deal. Push that open. Open sesame. And I've got to do something with this door to stop it from coming back around. Alright, so there's the extra reinforcement I was telling you about. That is 3 or 3.5 mil, 75 by 25 RHS, and it's going right to the corners where it's bolted in. So that is where the kind of strength is. This stuff here is extremely harder to bend than this standard 50 by 50 2.5mm right section. So by putting them together, I'm going to get more strength. This shelf is going to bend, and I can always adjust the bottom shelf by just tightening these threaded rods and bringing it up or bringing it down. So that's how I've decided to overcome the problem. And for what I'm storing here, you know, parts and things like that, it'll work. I've used some flooring for the top shelf. I've used some plywood for the bottom shelf and glued it down to the paneling. So it does have a little bit of movement and can flex, but it's good enough. And there's my safety chain just going around that pole at the back there. There's just a bit of chain I had, and I thought, well, I'll throw it in just in case. You never know. A few little edges to tidy up and a little bit more painting to do, but generally speaking, that's the amount of room. So on my scissor lift, if I reach my full hand, you can see I can reach it and reach it once again. And the whole idea of it is to like grab your box, put your box here, and then go down and then take it off. So by having this parcel shelf here is a lot easier. The doors, we've got some magnets here, and they just hit onto this part right here. All right, let's go down. I got to fix this door here. It keeps wanting to close. Reason being is just that the door's not exactly vertically hung. I hung it so that both sides marry up. I was more interested in that than having it vertically, 1000% vertical. All right, so just closing it up, and even now there is small discrepancy. Okay, that's closed. Okay, the window. What are the rules? Never build in front of a window and stuff like that. Well, I had to. I went over a lot of different scenarios about stepping it out, building around, building a cutout in the actual shelving so that the window isn't covered. Then I realized, look, for the amount that it's being covered, if you look at that, that's like, I don't know, 10%, 15%. I'm losing 15% of its functionality. So I wasn't too concerned. I know having a big beam in front of the window is undesirable, but the window still functions. The airflow is still going through there. A lot of people say louvers are yucky old technology and shitty. Well, they've got a very low footprint, which is really good. The other thing about them is that you're able to actually open up the whole window. As you talk about an all sliding window, you only get 50% airflow. So with louvers, when you open them up, you get 100% airflow, and the glass is kind of, you know, just flicked out, so it's not really in the way. I did have to modify the top handle with a pole so that you can pull both of them open. But in all fairness, for what it is, I think that was a reasonable solution, and it's doing the job. So that's the first pod. Yeah, so many little things to overcome and so many little issues, all of which is freestanding except for this last one here, which is anchored into this column here, and that's actually an additional column that I put in because of the doors. And if you talk about windows, and that little louver window here and that one there kind of creates a bit of airflow coming through here. That was the whole idea of it, to be able to open these up and get airflow through. But by having this here created a whole nother problem because the pool is there, had to have special mesh, and you know, I think it's in there quite tidy. Just enough room to open it. It gets airflow comes all the way through, and it can go straight back out over that side. So yeah, that worked out all right. That was the most expensive window in this whole shed. These two sliding glass ones with the track and all, $100. I paid for them second hand, and this cost me $400 to $500. This louver window over here was $100 from a place in the Northern Beaches. Had it at the side of their house for 5 years. Didn't want to use it or took it out, and you know, $100, that was fine. These glass doors here, $80, and then I built the frame, so that didn't cost me too much either. So the most expensive window was this one. Even this window over here, this one I picked up for $80. Sliding glass, very thin glass, not great, but at least it lets light in, lets air in. So that's where we're at 6 months later. 6 months later. So now I've done that. Now I'm going to spend the day kind of cleaning up and putting all the furniture back and stuff like this, and sorting out all the nuts and bolts. As you can see, my nuts, my bolts, threads. There's another box of just nuts and bolts. I got a lot of it. Yeah, it wasn't great, but nuts and bolts I'll always use. But yeah, in the end, it's done now. So the thought was it worth it for this type of money? You know, $3,000, but to be honest with you, probably about $3,500 plus 6 months of my time. Was it worth it? Well, when I compare it to everything else that I could have done or pre-made or You know, what else would there that would look warm and homely, do the job of the storage, and not look kind of too tatty? You know, nobody wants to sit under a mezzanine level or under a pallet storage thing. That just looks terrible and feels terrible. So 3.5, well, you know, it is what it is. If that's just the cost of raw materials, it is what it is. I think it looks nice, and I think it gives it a bit more of a nicer feel, rather than being surrounded by all this metal. So it does the job of storage. So yeah, I'm happy with it. I mean, I didn't ideally expect to spend that much. I didn't ideally expect to spend so long making it. I thought I'd knock it out in a couple of weeks, but it is what it is. Sometimes things just take longer. So yeah, all in all, I'm pretty happy with it. I'm pretty happy with it. And once I put the glass in there, we're probably going to be up to about 4,000. But even if you look at a pallet rack, you know, you're paying $400 or $500 for them. They wouldn't have made the distance, and then you're putting a pallet rack in front of, you know, what you'd like to look out at, the pool and something green. You put a pallet rack in front, and it just makes it feel terrible. So you don't want to look at something terrible. So yeah, I think it was okay. A piece of furniture these days will cost you $1,000 easy. I was going to get a special booth made up or make one myself here, and that was coming in at about close to $2,000, like a cafe type booth. So I'm going to come up with a different way of doing that. But even that, $2,000. Everything's thousands these days. Material is just through the roof in Australia. So all in all, I think it's a fair price. Leave down in a comment what you think. But anyway, that's it. That's completed. Now I'm going to spend my day filling it up with shit. Lots of shit. Shit and junk and storage and machines and all sorts. So I'm going to label them, put them in containers, get it all up there, and that should create a little bit of room on the floor. Leave your comments down below what you think. Do you think it looks all right? Do you think I wasted my time? Do you think it's excessive? Do you think I could have done things a little bit better to speed things up? If you've got any tips or tricks, any comments, leave them down below. Okay, thanks for watching.